Good morning. Today we are going to discuss section 23, that is one of the essential of contract, that the object and the consideration to a contract should be legal. Now section 23 is telling what considerations and objects are lawful. Means if they are not affected by certain conditions, then the object and consideration is lawful. Otherwise it is unlawful. Okay. The consideration or object of an agreement is lawful unless, it is clearly mentioned in the section unless, means it should not be affected by these. But because if it is affected by these things, then the object or the consideration will be unlawful. The first is what? If the object or the consideration is forbidden by law. If the object or consideration is forbidden by law, then that contract will be void. It will be void. It will not be enforceable because it is unlawful. Forbidden by law means what? When law has told that this should not be done and you are doing it. Law has clearly mentioned it that these are wrongs. You should not do it. And the object or the consideration of your contract is relating to that forbidden thing, then the object or consideration will be unlawful. We'll take an example. A, B and C enter into an agreement for the division among them of gains acquired or to be acquired by them by fraud. Means they are planning for committing a fraud or they have done a fraud. Whatever they have got from that fraud, they are making an agreement like how they are going to divide the things which they have got from that fraud. The agreement is void as its object is unlawful, because to commit a fraud on other, to gain illegally, to gain unlawfully or wrongfully is forbidden by law and you are doing it. Therefore the object is unlawful. So the first is what? If the object and consideration is forbidden by law, then that agreement is void. Second is of such nature that if permitted it would defeat the provisions of any law. Means if your agreement is having some terms and conditions which if made enforceable, they are going to affect the provisions of law, they are going to violate the provisions of law, then the object or consideration is illegal, unlawful. Okay, therefore the agreement is void. We'll take an example. If some wrong is there or some tort is there where the limitation period for that tort, for that action is 3 years. Means if a tort is being committed, a wrong is being committed, then you have to file a case in the court within 3 years of the cause of action. Okay. Now 3 years is a provision of law. And if we both make an agreement that if something that wrong occurs in between us, then we are going to provide for the limitation period for 4 years. Means if we both agree for the limitation period as 4 years, this is not a private legislation. Here, if this agreement is made enforceable, then what will happen? It is going to violate the provision of law which clearly states that the limitation period is 3 years. Therefore, our agreement will be void because it is of such a nature that if permitted, it would defeat the provisions of any law. Okay. Now the third is what? Is fraudulent in nature. In our agreement, there are some terms and conditions which are fraudulent. We are committing fraud on other party. Then it is unlawful. That agreement is void. Okay. Next is it involves or implies injury to the person or property of another. I am going to make an agreement with you, okay, in which I am telling that I will pay you lakhs of rupees if you injure somebody's property, if you commit theft, if you kill somebody. Such an agreement is void because the consideration which is there, because the object which is there, that is unlawful. Okay. Next is the court regards it as immoral or opposed to public policy. Now in this last concept they have mentioned two things. If the court regards it as immoral. Now if the consideration in an agreement is an act of sexual immorality, or where the object of the agreement is the furtherance of sexual immorality, then such an agreement is not enforceable by law because it is immoral. Means if some agreement is there in between two persons, a prostitute and the other, they have agreed for paying some money for the flesh business, and if the money is not paid, or if as promised the act is not been done, then the other party cannot come in the court for enforcing that agreement, because court regards this as something which is immoral. Okay, and the last is what? If the court regards it as opposed to public policy. Now if court regards that this is something wrong, something against public interest, then that will be unlawful. That agreement will not be enforceable. Now when something is there which is harmful for public welfare, then that will be called as against public policy. Now public policy cannot be defined clearly, okay, because public policy changes from government to government. What is the policy of the government? The decisions which are taken by the government for the welfare of the people, for the interest of the people. So that will be called as public interest or public policy. Now these policies are going to change from government to government, but the basic aspect in under that public policy is same of all the government, that is public welfare. Public policy is that principle of law which holds that no subject can lawfully do that which has a mischievous tendencies to be injurious to the interest of the public good, isn't it? Public policy is, you can say, it is an unruly horse, because it is going to change from the object of public policy is going to change from government to government, but the basic concept of public welfare never changes. Law relating to public policy cannot remain immutable. It must change with the passage of time, isn't it? So as the time changes, the public policy is going to change. It will depend upon the circumstances, or you can say the conditions which are prevailing at that time. But there are certain agreements which are being declared by law as against public policy. For example, an agreement trading with an enemy. Now two people of two different countries, if the war is declared, then they become enemy. So you can't have a trade against or with that enemy, that alien enemy, because he is from that foreign country and indirectly you are helping him. So if such an agreement is made between two people when war is being declared, that agreement is against public policy. That is not allowed here. Okay. Agreement to commit a crime, that is also against public policy. Agreements which interfere with the administration of justice, means in the course of justice, if you are interfering, if you are trying to bribe any officer of the court, then that is a crime, and the object, if such agreement is made, that object is unlawful. It is against public policy. Criminal must be punished. That is a basic principle of law. And what you are doing? You are doing something wrong in between this principle, because you are bribing some officer, you are manipulating the evidence, you are tampering with the evidence, some aspect of money is involved here. You are trying to save the criminal by this illegal and immoral manner, then that is against public policy. Stifling prosecution, an agreement not to prosecute an offender, means the crime should go unpunished. You are doing something by which the crime will go unpunished, then in that case it is against public policy. Agreements where you are trying to curtail the period of limitation, which we took an example. You can't curtail the limitation period, neither you can extend the limitation period, because if you do this, you are doing something which is against law. You are violating the provisions of law. That is not allowed. Trafficking in public offices and titles, that is also not allowed. That is also against public policy. Agreement in restraint of parental rights, agreements in relation to personal liberty. So these are agreements which are all against public policy. Agreement not to marry or restraining some marriage. No, the person is having a right, it is his personal right. whether to marry or not marry. You should not make an agreement with a person and tell him that you are going to pay him some money if he does not marry. He can take the money and he can marry. The agreement is completely void. Okay. Now this concept relating to object which is legal and object legal and consideration which is legal, that is mentioned in section 23. This is one of the essential of a legal agreement, that is a contract. I'll repeat again. The consideration and object will be lawful if it does not, unless it is forbidden by law. It is of such a nature that if permitted, it would defeat the provisions of law. Is fraudulent, involves or implies injury to person or property of another, or the court regards it as immoral or opposed to public policy. In each of these cases, the consideration and object of an agreement is said to be unlawful. Every agreement of which the object or consideration is unlawful is void. Okay, this is section 23. Okay, bye bye. See you in the next video.